All right, moving on to the second half. Factor to solve the quadratic equation. Once again, we're factoring. The only difference between this problem and the problem we did last time is this is not 1. Yes, we are on number 5. So, as I did last time, I'm going to go ahead and use the box and diamond again. If you're more comfortable with the algebraic grouping, please use that. You're welcome to do that if you want to. So, once again, we go first term and last term. The most important thing with this is not so much which corners they are, just as in their opposite corners. So either these two corners or these two corners. And then what do you do with the first and the last term? Multiply them. So what's our top number going to be? Negative 14x squared. And then what goes on the bottom? 5x, our middle term, goes on the bottom. So once again, we're looking for two numbers that multiply together to give us negative 14 and add together to give us 5. So we factor 14. We've got 1 and 14 and 2 and 7. Not divisible by 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we're back to 7. So if our top number is negative, what do we know about our side numbers? Bless you.
7 and 7 and 14.
One of them is going to be negative, and if the bottom is positive, then that means it needs to be the smaller number that's negative. So if our top number is negative, that means they multiply together to give us a negative number, right? So it's either one of the two has to be negative. Now if they... It does matter which one, because if the bottom number is positive, that means it's going to be the smaller that's negative.
If the bottom number is positive, the smaller one has to be negative?
Yep. If the bottom number is positive, the smaller factor has to be negative. If the bottom number is negative, then it's the larger factor that's going to be negative. So which pair of these adds up to 5? Yeah, 7 and negative 2. And we put those in the empty boxes. Now, when we factor, when our x squared coefficient is not 1, we have to be more careful about taking out our greatest common factor. Okay, so when I look at this column right here, what is my greatest common factor? What can I divide out of both 2x squared and negative 2x? X and...
I'm going to say 2, but one's a negative.
2. So we'll deal with the negative later. So, but we can divide out a 2x from both of these. We can't take a 2x out of this side because 7 is not divisible by 2. So the 2x can't go over here. Now, what do you multiply 2x by to get 2x squared? 1x, or just x. What do you multiply 2x by to get negative 2x? Negative 1. Okay. Then, what do we multiply x by to get 7x? 7. And then we always want to double check that these two numbers are multiplying together to give us that last corner. So negative 1 times 7, just negative 7. So our two factors are x minus 1 times 2x plus 7. And that is equal to 0. That's something we should have checked earlier on, that we were set equal to 0, but we were already okay on that one. So now what do I do to actually solve it? We have it factored. What's the step we take to solve it? The zero product property again. So we set each factor, so x minus 1 equal to 0. And then 2x plus 7 equals 0. And then we solve each one separately. The first one is pretty simple, plus 1, so x equals 1. We have to be little bit more careful with the second one. How do I solve 2x plus 7 equals 0? What do I do?
You get
Minus 7 from both sides. So I've got 2x equals negative 7,
divided by 2.
and then divide by 2. So I've got x equals negative 7 over 2, or I can also do that as what?
How are you doing?
It's not a horrifically weird decimal if I'm dividing by 2, so it's just negative 3.5. So those are my two answers on number 5. I am going to jump over to number 8. I'm going to jump around a little bit on the back, so scooch over to number 8 instead of down this time. So this is one that a lot of you guys kind of unnecessarily struggled with on the last test that you guys took. You can't just square root everything, and the main reason for that is you have to wait until you get x squared by itself to square root. So yeah, so we do our regular, because there's only an x squared, there's no other x's that we have to deal with, then we can just do subtract 1 from both sides. So I'm left with what on this side?
2x squared and then equals 162, and then you square root them, right?
Not yet.
No?
Divide by 2.
I didn't want to.
Then I want to divide by 2. Got to get that x squared by itself first. So now I have x squared equals, what's 162 divided by 2? 81. And now, because my x squared is totally by itself, this is where I square root. So what is the square root of 81? Is that my only answer?
No.
Plus or minus? Because when I take the square root of 81, I'm looking for a number that multiplies by itself to give us 81. 9 times 9 gives me 81, and negative 9 times negative 9 also gives me 81. So my answer here is x equals plus or minus 9. Any questions on that one? All right. I am going to, once again, jump down to number 7, because 6, 9, and 10 all have to do with graphing that parabola. So what I'm going to do is jump down to number 7, multiply and simplify. So this one, very much like number 1, I can either use the box method or the FOIL method. So what is x times x? And x times positive 6 plus 6x minus 6x
Minus
36.
And then the subs can cancel out, then you get.
What actually happens to the 6x and the negative 6x?
Yeah.
They add out to 0. So that's how they quote unquote cancel out. So what I'm left with is just x squared minus 36. Does anybody remember what that's called?
I don't know, but it's like the perfect.
Close. Not the perfect square trinomial. This is a difference of squares.
I knew there was something about squares.
So the difference is the subtraction part, subtracting two perfect squares. Okay, so this video is nearly 10 minutes long, so I'm going to stop this one, and then we'll do the last one, graphing.